Yujin, although I studied neuroscience, the question always plaguing me, is there anything non-physical about the mind? Anything whatsoever? I'm not talking about an immortal soul or some religious thing, but anything whatsoever, or is the brain everything? And with all the work I did in neuroscience, I can tell you honestly that I don't think I made any progress at all in terms of my own understanding. Can we make progress on that question?
The best argument for the claim that there is something beyond the physical is called the knowledge argument. And this argument was introduced by Frank Jackson in 1982. And this argument is based on a thought experiment. So imagine Mary, a brilliant scientist who lives in a black and white environment. So she's very smart and she has a lot of books, black and white books, and black and white TV as well. And she acquires complete physical knowledge. So she knows everything physical there is to know. But it seems obvious that when she comes outside her room, she learns something completely new, namely what it is like to see color.
So when she's in the room, which is all black and white, she can understand wavelengths of light, and she knows which are related to certain what's called colors, and she could pass any test on this. I mean, she knows everything about the nature of color, physically.
That's right. But what she doesn't know is what it is like to see red or what it is like to see blue and so on. So she doesn't know, she doesn't have phenomenal knowledge of conscious experiences.
What it feels like, the internal sense.
That's right.
Right.
And this is a beautiful argument because it consists of only two simple premises about Mary's knowledge. So the first premise says that Mary knows everything physical there is to know in her black and white environment. Okay, that sounds good. That's just a description of the thought experiment.
Yeah.
And the second premise says that Mary discovers something new upon her release. She would say, wow, this is what it is like to see color.
And it would have to be surprising because she would have no other experience.
Exactly. So this is a very intuitive premise as well. But once you accept these two premises, you cannot but deny deny physicalism. So physicalism is false because Mary's complete physical knowledge doesn't cover everything. So that's why Jackson says that physicalism is false. This is a refutation of physicalism.
Okay, I mean, it's you always are suspicious of simplistic arguments that get you to gigantic metaphysical conclusions. But you walked me through each of the two premises, and you don't see anything immediately wrong with either one of them.
So this argument is intuitively plausible. And I'm attracted to this argument as well. But I think at the same time, there is something wrong with this argument. So let's go back to Mary. Ideally, we want to have her here and ask her to acquire complete physical knowledge. So we want her to learn every physical truth. And then we ask her whether she knows what it is like to see color. But we cannot do that. We have to place her in a black and white environment. And because of that, she has a lot of constraints. So for example, she can only acquire facts that are only theoretically communicable. So she has to learn everything by reading books and watching a TV and so on. So what she can acquire is facts that are theoretically communicable. But I don't think physicalists are committed to the idea that everything is theoretically communicable. So that's why I don't think the argument refutes physicalism.
So what does that mean, not communicable?
Truth or facts that are not theoretically communicable are things that cannot be captured by theories of physical sciences. So scientific theories talk about the structure and function and dynamics of physical properties and objects and so on. But there are certain things that theories cannot capture. My understanding of physicalism is this. So consider a paradigmatic physical object, like a table. Okay. If physicalism is true, then there is no metaphysical discontinuity between this table and everything else. Yeah. So that's physicalism, at least my understanding of physicalism. And this view is not committed to the claim that everything is captured by theories in physical sciences. So Mary knows everything that scientific theory tells her, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Mary knows absolutely everything in the physical world.
So, that being so, if this most powerful argument against physicalism ultimately is false, do you then have to accept physicalism?
Physicalism, not necessarily in the traditional sense. I'm attracted to a form of monism, which is sometimes called Russellian monism.
Which means?
Which means that the universe is metaphysically uniform. So there is nothing beyond this universe. But at the same time, it's not true that scientific theories can capture everything. There are some intrinsic feature of the universe that cannot be captured by scientific theories. But that doesn't mean that everything in this world is purely physical.
But everything is the same thing. That's what monism means. There's one kind of stuff. And you have to admit that that's one kind of stuff is susceptible to the scientific method. And we're learning more and more about that stuff. But you're just postulating something out of the air, that something else is on that stuff or in that stuff that science will never be able to capture. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, for example, this chair, we can analyze this chair in terms of its structure and components and so on. And science is very good at explaining these structure, function, dynamics of these physical objects. But it doesn't really explain the chair in itself. So science has to take a specific point of view and explain the structure, function, and dynamics of physical objects. But that doesn't mean that everything can be exhausted by scientific theories.
The alternative is that you say that your monism is the physical world, all the things we study in science, and then something more, something that science will never get to. But whatever you're defining as that something more that science will never get to, I'm saying could well be just a human construct that has nothing to do with reality, such that if we define an object to be floors and chairs together, which we don't do, and we had that construct of a floor chair, and every time we saw something, that's the way we saw the world, that would be a new way to understand reality, but that's just a human construct. So it would seem that the only different things that you're talking about are human constructs. So that would mean that physicalism is true other than these human constructs, which have no substance in reality.
Actually, I'm quite sympathetic to that idea. So some people think that Russellian monism is a form of physicalism. It doesn't postulate anything spiritual or purely mental and so on. The universe is metaphysically continuous. So the universe is a monistic universe. So there is nothing ontologically distinct from this chair and consciousness. It's just that we cannot really understand the connection between this chair and consciousness because we miss some concepts there. And science cannot capture this missing bit.
Science can't capture that because of its weaknesses or its incompleteness now, or in principle it can never capture it?
Some people claim that once science has a new concept, we can solve this problem. Maybe we can fill the gap, and finally we can provide a complete theory of everything, and we can understand why this chair and consciousness look so different, even though they are metaphysically continuous. But some other people claim that it is intrinsically impossible to understand this connection. But nevertheless, the universe is uniform and homogeneous.